Week 10 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 12 tight ends I'm ranking this week. The first guy, Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. Each and every week, it's either going to be Kelce or Mark Andrews at that number one spot at the tight end positions. Travis Kelce coming off another great ball game with about 20 fantasy points last week in a tough fought battle versus the Tennessee Titans. And this week here, another good matchup for Travis Kelce versus Jacksonville Jaguar defense that don't really stop anyone. I think this is going to be a blowout victory for this Kansas City Chiefs team. And it wouldn't be surprising to me to see Kelce in this one have 70, 80 yards, find the end zone at least once, maybe twice in this one. And I got him in number one. Number two, Dallas Goedart of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Dallas Goedart quickly becoming the number two target over there in Philadelphia behind A.J. Brown in the passing game. And Goedart last week going over 20 fantasy points on that Thursday night matchup at the Houston Texans. So right now, him and Ertz have a great rapport. And they always did starting last season where Ertz got the start from the get-go last year. Made Zach Ertz expendable. They traded him away to Arizona. And Dallas Goedart right now already one of the best tight ends in all of fantasy football. And this week here, I think he has another great ball game versus a weak Washington Commander defense on Monday night here. And I got him in number two. Number three, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. So George Kittle, he's been getting it going over the last couple weeks. And now with the addition of Christian McCaffrey, it just opens up the field for everyone. Kittle now, he'll get more single coverage or even more zone coverage where he can work the middle of the field and the seam to make some more plays. And like I said, Kittle was banged up early in the season. Him and Trey Lance didn't really have a rapport in the few games Lance started last season for the 49ers. When him and Jimmy Garoppolo have a good rapport, it's Jimmy's security blanket and a guy he trusts throwing to. So this week in a good matchup versus the Los Angeles Chargers, we saw Kyle Pitts have a pretty good ball game versus last week here. I think once again George Kittle has a good game. He's back to pretty much a top 5, top 7 tight end this season, this Kittle. But this week I got him at 3. Number 4, Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals. So Zach Ertz, he's having a great season in his first full season with this Arizona Cardinal team, becoming the second target in the passing games behind DeAndre Hopkins, who obviously returned a couple weeks ago. So right now this season, Zach Ertz, 8 of the 9 first ball games this season, double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. And this week here, a pretty good matchup with the Los Angeles Rams, a team he's obviously familiar with and that this Cardinal team played already earlier in the season here. So Zach Ertz, you're just going to expect it each and every week now, 10 or more fantasy points here for him. And last week he found the end zone versus Minnesota, and this week it's a possibility he could do that once again at the Los Angeles Rams. Number 5, Gerald Everett of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Gerald Everett, he's been under the radar type of tight end this season, and a guy I've been praising since the offseason as a guy to get and have in your fantasy team, and he can produce for fantasy owners, and a guy you wouldn't have to spend an early pick on it. Gerald Everett, he's gone out there, and for the most part, he's played pretty solid here, especially over the last few weeks with 7 or more fantasy points in the last 3 ball games. Right now, we know Keenan Allen's banged up. I don't think he's going to play this week. Mike Williams, he's going to be out a couple more weeks, most likely with his high ankle sprain. And Gerald Everett, he's going to get more targets peppered his way. Him and Joshua Palmer are going to pick up the slack over there for this Charger team. And this week here, in a potential shootout at the San Francisco 49ers, where they might have to throw the football a lot, even if they're down in this game, I think Everett once again could get anywhere from 8 to 9 fantasy points, at least minimum. And I got him at 5 this week. Number 6, T.J. Hockenson of the Minnesota Vikings. Hockenson last week in a surprising deal traded from the Lions, the division rival, the Minnesota Vikings. So right now the Vikings, they had Irv Smith Jr. at tight end. He got hurt, and they wanted to upgrade and open the field up more for Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. And that's what definitely happened here. So he's a big red zone target. He's a guy that can run all the routes. He could block as well. 3-down tight end, obviously, in Hockenson. And last week in his debut was a Minnesota Viking. 9 targets, 9 catches, 70 yards. So right here this week, I know tough matchup at the Buffalo Bills. That's one of the best, if not the best, defenses in pro football this season. But T.J. Hockenson, he could be a matchup nightmare for linebackers or even safeties that teams try to put on him. And like I said, with Justin Jefferson over there, this whole passing game is wide open. So Hockenson this week, I like him even in the tough matchup. And number 6 at Buffalo. Number 7, Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders. Darren Waller, it's been a lost season for him, no doubt about it. And a guy who I think's dogging it as well, like Michael Thomas did for a little bit, and then he was finally ruled out for the season last week after missing 4 or 5 weeks with Thomas. But anyway, back to Darren Waller. We haven't seen him in game action since week 4. Week 5, he sat out. Then week 6, they had the bye, and he's practiced a couple times, limited basis here and there over the last 4 or 5 weeks. But he's a guy I can't count on. But if he does play in this game, it's a pretty decent matchup versus the Indianapolis Colts. I give up the 13th most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. So if Waller plays, I got him in number 7. If not, Forster Monroe is going to fill in for him, and he's a guy you can use in deeper leagues. Number 8, Pat Friermuth, Pittsburgh Steelers. So Pat Friermuth, one of the better guys on this Pittsburgh Steelers team. This year, not a lot of offense going around over there. Obviously, Deontay Johnson, the possession guy, but he really hasn't put up numbers. Chase Claypool, they traded him away at the deadline to the Chicago Bears. And they got to see what they got with the rookie George Pickens. So Pat Friermuth, he's been one of the top targets since Kenny Pickett's coming in quarterback. And Friermuth last season was good as a rookie with Ben Roethlisberger. And this season, he's had a couple good games. So this week here in a pretty good matchup versus the New Orleans Saints, where I think they might have to be chasing points anyway to start with, is this Pittsburgh Steelers team. I think Pat Friermuth, he can make a few plays in this game. I think 60, 70 yards weekly, you definitely could expect with 4 or 5 catches. And if you could add a touchdown on top of those projected numbers here, that would be a huge fantasy day for a pretty weak tight end position this season. So I got him at number 8. Number 9, Cade Otton of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he was the hero in last week's ball game, Cade Otton, catching the game-winning touchdown in just a pretty tough ball game for this offense in general. It was, but he had his best game of his young NFL career, 5 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. And this week here, a great matchup versus the Seattle Seahawks. I give up the most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. So right now, this Buck team's going to Germany to versus Seattle. We'll see how this one goes. And Tom Brady, I think he's going to start breaking out and get things going. Right now, Cade Otton, he obviously has trust in for a rookie in a big situation, in a big ball game where they needed it, to get 6 targets and to hit him down the stretch for a game-winning touchdown. That's definitely confidence. I know Cameron Brady returned to practice and might be back, but I think it's Cade Otton's time, and they drafted him for a reason as another legit weapon for Tom Brady. So right now, if you're in a pinch at tight end, believe it or not, Cade Otton's still out there in 84% of fantasy leagues. Number 10, David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. And Njoku, he's been out over the last few weeks with an ankle injury, and right now, he didn't practice early on Wednesday. We'll see if he plays in this game. And it's a 50-50, I think, at this point. So right here, David Njoku having the best season of his NFL career this year so far. Very surprised to me. I thought he was pretty much a bust, but he's gone out there and proved me wrong this season. 34 catches, 418 receiving yards, and a touchdown and a fumble loss. So right here, this Brown team, they got a pretty decent nucleus of players at wide receiver and tight end. And when Deshaun Watson comes back, all these guys' values are going to go up once Watson's back in action, even though we haven't seen him play a pro football game in a year and a half is Deshaun Watson. But anyway, David Njoku, if he plays, I got him in number 10. Matchup at the Dolphins, that give up the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. And this Brown team here, they like using him in the passing game. He's a 3-down tight end. And if he plays, I got him at 10. Number 11, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. So Kyle Pitts got off to a horrible start the first 6 weeks of the season, but the last couple weeks here, it's been one good game, one bad game for Kyle Pitts. And right here, pretty decent matchup in Week 10 tonight on Thursday Night Football at the Carolina Panthers. Going back to Week 8, he had his best game of the season was Pitts versus the Panthers. 5 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. So right here, he barely made the top 12 this week here after it's just been inconsistencies. He had a 3.90 game at Cincinnati in Week 7. Week 8 versus the Panthers, 19. And then Week 9 versus the Chargers, 4.70. So right here, because what he did in Week 8, I'm going to give him a nod at number 11 is Kyle Pitts. But it wouldn't surprise me if he has another dud performance on the 12th and final tight end I'm ranking this week. Dalton Schultz of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dalton Schultz, he didn't do much, obviously, with Cooper Rush at quarterback for the Cowboys. But now Dak Prescott, he's been back a couple weeks for this Cowboy team. And Dalton Schultz last season was one of his favorite targets of Dak Prescott in his security blanket. And so far in the 2 games back with Prescott, Schultz has had good ball games. Week 7 versus Detroit, 5 catches, 49 yards. And Week 8 versus Chicago, 6 catches, 74 yards on 7 targets. So right here, not the greatest of matchups on paper. Week 10 at Green Bay, up the second least amount of fantasy points the tight ends on the season. But right now, Dalton, Schultz, and Dak has that good ESP. He got him the nice franchise tag last season, Dalton Schultz. And right here, once again, I think he could finish in the top 12, even in a tough matchup at Green Bay. So that's the top 12 tight ends I'm ranking here for Week 10 of the fantasy football season.